Yes, and we are back. You are tuned in to the Last Mile Radio right here on Sirius XM. Chris.
Yes, sir.
It's about to go down, man. It's about to go down yet again.
We have a great guest today.
Absolutely.
Who do we have?
We got somebody that's actually pretty inspirational, somebody I can actually connect with in plenty ways, for real. And I'm definitely excited to announce we got Dr. Yehudah Pryce right here with us on the Last Mile Radio. Welcome to the Last Mile Radio.
So great to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we really appreciate it because you have a really interesting story. And, this show is on Sirius XM on streaming services, but it also goes into all of our TLM classrooms.
Okay.
In prisons across the country. So it's really an opportunity for folks inside to understand stories of transformation, redemption, and path to success, which you are one. So, just a little layer of inspiration on top of that for those folks listening as well.
Okay, I'll be speaking to my people then. So
That's
absolutely,
it. That's
absolutely.
Right. So taking it back a little bit, you've gone through this really kind of amazing journey from, gang relationship to where you are today as really a pillar of your community and going through a real impressive educational journey. But take us back to a little bit where pre-incarceration, what that environment was like, and what that led to the path that you went down.
Okay, great question. There's always an origin story. People don't just end up in prison. Well, some people do, but that's a whole other story. But a lot of it had to do with me and my search for identity. I am a first-generation American. My mother immigrated here from Sri Lanka. My father immigrated here from Jamaica. They divorced when I was 2 years old. So my mother ended up remarrying a white man. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but for a young black boy searching for identity, right, that causes problems. You had people that said I wasn't black enough. Then you had people that said I was black enough, right, and I faced the sort of egregious forms of discrimination, being, chased home, called the N-word in front of my family, to myself. And so I was really looking for identity, a place of belonging, of who I was and what purpose I had. And I found that when I was able to hang around with the sort of neighborhood gang members, that I felt that sort of family. I felt that acceptance. I was truly, there was no discrepancy whether I was black or my identity. And not only that, I found that there was something even more attractive than just being accepted. It was this sort of sense of power, right? I had power and agency now. Now I could walk into a room and I got respect. Maybe there's a little bit of fear there, but nonetheless, they recognized my presence.
Sure.
So that allowed me to continue down this pathway. And if anybody knows me, I am somebody that can be determined and committed, and that's what I was. And I'm also somebody that believes if you're determined and committed, that sometimes you deal with whatever consequences that comes that way. And so prison, jail, juvenile hall, it didn't dissuade me at all. If anything, every time I was incarcerated in juvenile hall, I went in and out in juvenile hall. I've taken cases to trial in juvenile during my juvenile days. It was a badge of honor to get arrested, right? Now my peer group, the only peer group that I cared about, because they were the only peer group that accepted me, right? They recognize that, he's committed and he's not deterred from whatever the consequences were. So that's kind of a little bit about my origin story that led me to full-fledged commitment to committing crime in the streets.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's deep. If you don't mind me asking, how much time did you do and what'd you go down for?
So I was originally arrested as a teenager, age 19 actually, and I was sentenced to 24 years. The main crime was a robbery. They gave me 4 years for the robbery. Nobody was hurt. I don't say that to minimize anything, but to let you know, like somebody didn't get shot or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I got 4 years for the robbery, 10 years because a gun was displayed in the commission of the robbery, and then another 10 years because it was said that it was done for the benefit of a gang. Mm-hmm. So 20 years in enhancements, 4 years for the robbery. Eventually, they passed the youth offender bill. Mm-hmm. It was in 2016, I believe, that went in effect where that if the crime was committed under the age of 23, you were eligible for an early parole hearing. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up only having to do a little bit over 16 years. But I would add this, right? And this is kind of, I have I have my opinions of the criminal legal system. I say criminal legal because I don't want to say criminal justice, because justice to who, right?
Yeah.
Differs
Come on, man. That's right.
Right. That there was, for me, as somebody who was convicted of committing a robbery is considered a violent offense, there was no incentive for me to undergo any sort of rehabilitative programming while I was incarcerated, because I couldn't earn not one day off my sentence. This is prior to all the sort of alleged criminal justice reform laws that were passed. And so I didn't really do too much until I heard that there was a law being passed, and that kind of incentivized me to, you know what, I need to take this seriously. And so that's what kind of, there was already change going on, but that's what cemented my growth and my rehabilitative gains.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot about that because when we started Last Mile, it was coming off of several terms in California, Governor Gray and Governor Schwarzenegger, where very few people were being found suitable.
Yeah,
hence, there's no hope, to your point.
Sure.
When Jerry Brown came in, all of a sudden, there was this mandate to provide more realignment and provide more opportunity. So that percentage went way up. All of a sudden, people sitting in your seat said, oh, man, if I do some work and I work on myself, I can potentially get out. That has changed, to your point, that's changed how people look at individually and how the community inside looks, right?
Exactly.
So the other point is, you talked about enhancements. That's something we've talked a lot about here, and we talked to Earlonne Woods about that,
Right.
From Ear Hustle. Where in his situation, enhancements, I mean, it more than doubled your sentence, right? But those are type of things that people don't realize, the inequities around the sentencing as well. But the idea that you didn't really take any type of action inside until you saw that you might get out, I mean, that really has changed things a lot, certainly in California.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it changed the game, because I was running a lot of these groups when I found out, they're changing, the law changed, I could get out, I got to go before a parole board, and they're going to kind of review my progress I've made inside. And I started taking all types of programming, and I seen more people start engaging in programming. And I don't want to call it fake it till you make it, right? But I believe if you are surrounding yourself around a lot of pro-social, positive programming people, it's more likely to rub off on you. You're going to start thinking in different ways. You're going to be forced to have particular conversations that you weren't, because prior to that, right, vulnerability, opening up was a weakness, right? Like in prison, if I met confrontation with confrontation, if I showed I was more aggressive, right, that was a legit survival mechanism, right? And so now that this programming push came into play, people started looking in ways about their surroundings, about who they are, what their future might entail, right? And I think more so than anything, right? And this is why I use this sort of, everybody has different phrases of how different sort of terminology of how you refer to people incarcerated. I tend to refer to people who happen to be incarcerated as community members, right? Incarcerated community members are community members with an incarceration experience if they're during reentry, because I think
I like that.
Yeah, it's sort of centering that we're community members and there's a connection. So there's a we as opposed to a us and them,
Sure.
An othering, right? And I think once we ourselves can see ourselves as community members, we're going to change, right? If you start focusing on our strengths as opposed to our deficits, right? That changes how we look at ourselves. It changes the way how our family looks at us, how our community does, and that's how you kind of change the narrative.
Well, it's also humanization, right? The humanizing language is really important. But I want to step back, and you had gang affiliation before you went in.
Yes.
How did you resolve that? Because there's that pull to be affiliated inside. How did you? Was part of your religious change your affiliation, or was that those two separate issues?
Well, so it was a weird thing for me in that I called myself like sort of a free agent gangster prior to being incarcerated, a one-man gang, so to speak, is that I affiliated with a lot of different gangs without having sort of formal allegiance to a particular gang. They gave me the gang enhancement. They don't have any problem, because if one member in the crime is a gang member, then it's technically benefited a gang. So I had a choice of, did I want to deepen whatever sort of neighborhood connections I had while I was in prison, or did I want to take the chance? And there is a chance, because you lose that protection, you lose that sort of camaraderie, right? Like, you get to a prison, people might give you food packages, hygiene and all that. So
even physical protection, though.
Physical protection, and a lot of times I could have really used that protection, because you're in an environment where people look to take advantage of people, right? Especially when the system cultivates that, right?
Right.
So I made a choice not to be, to get more affiliated, but also there was just like a lot of decisions that went on where I finally kind of realized, all right, I never feared the consequences, right? But what am I doing? What sort of life am I living right now? What is my purpose, right? And is it connected to something that transcends anything that's worth facing these consequences? And I realized no. And so I made this sort of break where I started focusing a lot on myself. The religious aspect did help when I actually became affiliating with the Jewish chapel in there, and I remember putting a kippah, a yarmulke on, right? And so that made a sort of that was like a physical change, right? People noticed that, and that was a big deal. They're like, "Hey, who's this black guy with the yarmulke on?" Right? That's saying something, right? But I think that helped me because it allowed me to really cultivate a certain sense of ethics and morality, a way to view the world, and a way to connect my actions with true meaning and purpose that transcended whatever sort of limited options I had at the time.
That's deep. That's deep. That's heavy. But for several reasons. For me, I could strongly connect with that because while I was incarcerated, I too also embraced and practiced Judaism as well. And I definitely know that feeling of having to keep on and making that commitment. But the change that comes with that, the change in perspective, but also the change of self. You know what I mean? To represent in a setting like that's a real bold statement and a bold move to make. For so many different reasons. Like, that can get you, in my opinion, that can get you ostracized. You know what I'm saying? But when you know what side of the line you on, and like you said, moving with purpose, you know what I mean? That overshadows all of that. So I definitely commend you for that. But that strongly resonated with me for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, to your point, yeah, like people like could be very judgmental, and when you start breaking the sort of norms in there, right? They're like, hey, who? And it's very racialized. So people having their idea that Jews are connected to some specific racial group, and then are you trying to be like that other race? If something happens violently, because the way the sort of the racial political lines are is that if something happens between races, that you have to jump in with your particular, on the side of your particular race, or face disciplinary consequences. So it's not simply I want to be a better person, leave me alone. It's I want to be a better person, but I better not catch myself involved in any sort of situation where
it's risky.
It's hard. It's hard all the way around.
It definitely is a fine line to walk, because now also after making that commitment too is representation. You know what I mean? So I feel like not only did I represent myself, but I'm also representing the congregation. You know what I mean? I'm also, it's a lot on the line in that sense. So I didn't necessarily want to tarnish anything in that degree neither. And we were discussing earlier, right, as far as having haters. And I know you know this firsthand from being in prison, for sure. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of supporters. But unfortunately, when you try something new, I think it's because so many people are scared to step out of their own comfort zone. When you see somebody doing something innovative or doing something new or something better, like, people just hate on that, and they waiting for you to change back to your old ways. Just to be like, I knew you was faking, or why are you doing it? Like, they waiting on it. You know what I mean? So those were some of the things that kind of fueled me to continue on my path as well. Like, I'm not gonna give y'all that gratification, like, at the end of the day. And I know why I'm doing what I'm doing is genuine. You know what I mean? So, like,
exactly.
But it's a thin line nonetheless, for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard, and especially if you can imagine somebody who said, I entered this sort of life of crime for struggling with identity, right? And so for me to have a solidified identity and then say, nah, let me try something else, right? At that particular time when race really mattered, right? Yeah, it was tough, but I think to your point, when you have a particular set of convictions, right, it doesn't matter like what anybody thinks, and if anything, the sort of hate that you mentioned, right, it allowed me to really, really clarify why I'm doing what I'm doing, what I'm standing for, what I'm representing. And to your point that you mentioned, I think I had a communal responsibility because I knew the standards of one particular community, and that's what I was connecting to. So I had to hold myself to those standards and not worry about whatever anybody else thought about me.
Real talk.
So,
So real quick, I'm curious to know too. I kind of want to fast forward a little bit. How has like Judaism impacted your life after release?
So I would say, from my personal experience, Judaism has been fundamental in my reentry success. Like when we talk about different things of reentry, right? So I converted to Orthodox Judaism, which required me, right, when you're going through that process, and it takes well over a year, right, minimum. You have to move within walking distance of a synagogue, so it means your Jewish community is in a small sort of radius, right? And so I was offered discounted housing when I got in. This is me getting fresh out of prison. I'm going to the safest city in America. Irvine has been designated the safest city in America for 18 years in a row now.
Wow.
Right? We're talking about violent crime for big cities. I'm sure there's a small city less violent somewhere. But yeah, so I'm going to this place, right? And I didn't know any Jews in the free world. So not that I was aware of, that I was cognizant of. But they helped me with housing. They helped me, and I think more than anything, right, is that every Friday night for Shabbos, for a Kiddush meal, right, I was getting invited to different families' dinner tables, right? I'm seeing the different family dynamics. I'm seeing the way people are connected to a community, and the synagogue and the shul as a central hub for this, right? And I'm going to different houses, and you want to think about it, but Irvine has a very diverse community, like we have an African-American family of 8. We just had an African-American family of 6 there, a Guatemalan family, a Mexican family, Chinese family, of Orthodox Jews, right? And so I'm seeing this sort of melting pot because we're all connected to these standardized values, right? And this way of being. And to me, I truly felt I was being the person I was meant to be, and I had the communal backing, and I felt responsible to this particular community, right? And so with the housing, there was different sort of networking, people trying to connect me with this job or that job, knowing my sort of background and support in so many ways I can't even detail. It took me too long in this show, right? But they were fundamental, and I think if anything, I helped with reentry, right? List some of my biography, right? If you could find somebody stable housing, if you find the people that sort of pro-social, communities, communal organizations, whatever that is, to connect with, right, and resources to access, right, they're going to have that much greater likelihood of being successful and not contributing to recidivism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you were going down that path, you also went through an educational journey. So when did that start? That started inside, because now you're Dr. Pryce.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I did it just for the business cards. So it's still a little sensitive, right? So I'm still holding on to student loan trauma right now. But so I obtained my AA when I was in Pelican Bay State Prison, maximum security prison.
What year were you in Pelican Bay?
From 2006 to 2010.
So it was still Pelican Bay.
Yeah, it was Yeah. Things have changed.
Which is great. Absolutely.
But back then, right, it was rough. My number one concern while trying to obtain my AA was not whether I was intellectually capable of completing the AA degree, was whether something would happen and I would have to go to hold administrative segregation because something happened on the yard, right? And I wanted to be able to complete that. So
just to interject, the Last Mile is now operating in Pelican Bay.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, so that's how things have changed.
That noise y'all heard, that was the mic drop.
Oh, that was me getting animated with my hands and hitting the mic. Apologize, y'all. But so that's great. That's awesome. I would have loved to listen to The Last Mile while I was in Pelican Bay.
But we're teaching coding in there.
The Last Mile is teaching.
Actual program.
You're gonna have to really tell me everything that The Last Mile does, right? Because that seems awesome. So I was able to get my AA. Back then, they didn't have any of these sort of pilot programs for Pell Grants or anything like that. And I kind of knew, I'm like, the only way that I know that education is a key for me to change my status as a sort of criminal, as I'm being labeled, a felon or whatever, right? It has the ability to change that, my social status, and open up pathways and access to opportunities that I couldn't imagine. And right now, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I do know that education is key. And I wanted to work on myself. And I think one of the things that is hard, one of the many things that's hard about being in prison is to have all these dreams and aspirations and not be able to act on them, right? And so I wanted this educational thing, but I couldn't do it. I was eventually able to get my family and friends to purchase a class here and there, right? I couldn't necessarily do it myself. My 13 cents an hour just didn't cut it. And I was able to take college classes here and there, not like a full semester. So by the time I was released in October of 2018, I was 21 units shy of my bachelor's degree. And what I did is I got out October 22nd, 2018. I enrolled in 3 different colleges for all 21 units immediately when I got out. And so when January hit, got out in October, January hit, I was in 3 colleges, all 21 units, and I was doing an internship at Beit Shuvah, which is a Jewish residential addiction treatment center in Los Angeles. Who, by the way, the founder, Harriet Rosetto, used to be a Jewish social worker going inside prisons, and she ended up marrying one of those prisoners who became the founding rabbi of Beit Shuvah. So it was a good fit for me, right? And so I did. I immediately graduated. I did the 21 units, and I graduated in May of 2019. I immediately, because this was my dream when I was in prison, that I wanted to become a social worker, because I felt that my record in prison wasn't going to be looking at as a deficit, right? In social work, it could be an asset, right? My lived experience can inform my own decisions, but it could connect me to the population that I want to help, right? The population that consisted of me as well. And so I enrolled in the University of Southern California School of Social Work in August of 2019. I did the fastest possible way to take as many classes as possible, summer courses and all that. And then in December of 2020, I graduated with my Master's of Social Work from USC. I immediately, even prior to graduating, I was able to talk my way into a doctorate program at Simmons University, and it's in Boston, Massachusetts, to do my doctorate of social work, because I didn't want to just essentially be regurgitating things that have already been tried. I also wanted to kind of do my own sort of thinking and implement it as well. And so that's what I did, and I completed that in 2023. I just qualified to take my clinical exam to become a licensed clinical social worker. So you need 3,000 hours of direct clinical experience. So I have that as well, and so I'm just waiting right now to actually take the test. So that's been my sort of educational journey. Very compact.
Still learning.
Yeah, still learning.
That's great.
But I'm blown away, man. We just can't stumble. We can't just roll over the fact, bro. You enrolled in 3 colleges at once.
Yeah, because they don't let you take. They advise you not to take a certain amount of units, because 21, like one more class, and that's like 2 semesters in 1 semester, right? If we're talking about like 24 units, right? And so, yeah, I knew that I needed to fast track this as much as possible, because I lost so many years, right? And so I had to do what I had to do.
The time has come, Chris. The time has come.
You got to do it.
I got to do it. One thing we do on the Last Mile Radio, man, we give flowers, man. We give flowers. And where that stems from, a lot of times people get the credit, you know what I mean, get acknowledgments, and quite literally like flowers put on their grave after they already done passed away. So we want to give you the acknowledgement. We want to uplift you, you know what I mean, give you your flowers while you can still smell them. Like, your journey is incredible. And just to think, we ain't even done yet. We ain't even done with it yet. We still getting through it. You know what I mean? It's been incredible, bro. Talk about powerful. So got to give you your flowers, man.
Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that. More so than anything, and that's why I'm glad like people inside are hearing that. I think for a lot of us, it's just that to know, not that I should be like the sort of exception, right? But people should know that there should be a general rule that we can be as much as we choose to want to aspire to be and do, right? We just got to get these barriers and obstacles out of our way.
Absolutely. It's and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Also, I think we've been covering a lot about evolution. You know what I mean? I think a lot has evolved in your story, for sure. So I'm curious to know, how has your perspective on social justice and activism evolved since your release from incarceration?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think more than anything, when it comes to social justice and activism, a lot of times in prison, like you kind of glean what's going on, but you don't know how it actually functions and works, grassroots community building and all that, right? And so as soon as I got out of prison, through my internship at Beit Shuvah, I was working with Adam Siegel, who was the community development director. He connected me with it was this nascent sort of social justice group forming, which was the District Attorney Accountability Coalition. had a lot of sort of grassroots community organizations, and I got to actually see what it takes, right? And there's a lot of allyship, there's a lot of community building, there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of showing up for people for whatever they're working on, and then it comes back to you as well, and because we're all fighting against the sort of systemic stuff that gets in the way of the change that we need to see, right? And so just being involved, hands-on, I found out that I knew that it takes commitment, it takes these sort of partnerships, right? It takes vision, right? And it takes the ability to kind of adjust to new information as it comes in, right? And I think a key sort of takeaway I got is a lot of times, because I could be very idealistic, like thinking Pollyannish, thinking I just need this sort of utopia that I'm going to build right away, but you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right. And so I've seen that for a lot of times. We had a lot of haggling, a lot of going back and forth in different sort of social justice spaces. Right. But a lot of good could be accomplished if we just don't think that it has to be perfect right away.
Right.
That sort of, as you mentioned, evolution, that incremental change. Sometimes we want big jumps, and sometimes we can do it. Right. But sometimes we gotta focus on the good and not destroy everything for the perfect.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And how has your family reacted to this? Obviously, you mentioned, your upbringing and so forth. How have they reacted to your evolution and where you are today?
They've been largely supportive. So I come from a very diverse background. My mom was raised a practicing Muslim with her 9 siblings. My father was a Baptist Christian. And they don't really care about the religious aspect of anything. They care that, like, oh, our son is doing positive things,
there
right?
You go.
He's not getting into trouble,
yeah.
right? He seems very ethical, and I'm married with 4 children, so I'm raising a family, and they see that, and they see who I am, right? And so they're just super supportive, and they actually love, like, I get the commentary just like on my community, because they get to actually be there and witness it, like, your community is amazing. Like, I see the support, right? And I never grew up with that support from any community I had, right? I wasn't getting random dinner invitations as I walk down the street, right? And I see that everywhere. So they're just super supportive. All my family, my siblings, everybody.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know. Has it been any challenges? Being black and practicing Judaism in America. I'm sure it's a lot that could come with that. You know what I mean? Has it been any challenges?
So it's a fair question. It's a good question, and I'll speak from my individual experience, of course, because people encounter the sort of challenges they do situationally, and I can't speak for that. I could tell you about my particular experience. I've been embraced, like, wherever I go. So I speak all across the country at different synagogues and different places, from people who might be more liberal, people who might be more conservative. But I speak to them all, and I get invited to people's houses, in their homes, and from their family, having very deep conversations where people are opening up to me. I think more than anything, we have a shared sort of way of being in this world, looking at this world, and people are willing to give people second chances. We have a concept in Judaism called teshuvah, right? Which means that, I'll just give you a commentary on it that essentially says that where your misdeeds, right, your mistakes can become merits, right? That's how powerful teshuvah is. That if you're willing to change, right, that you're changing, like, the nature of existence itself, right, and that becomes merit. So I get so much. I just had a feature article in one of the largest Orthodox Jewish magazines, Mishpacha, that just got released. Like, there's so much support. So my experience has been great and welcoming, an experience that I have never received in the entirety of my life, like I have in the Orthodox Jewish community.
I love to hear that, man.
Yeah.
I love to hear that. So serious.
So what would you say to, again, we're inside prison, what would you say to some of those folks who are kind of at that crossroads where you were? What are some of the as E says a lot, pearls that you can drop on them? And
them jewels. Yeah, drop them jewels.
Drop them jewels. Drop them gems. All right.
Gems, pearls, jewels, whatever.
All of the above.
Whatever it is. But what would you say that really sparked it for you?
That life matters now. Right? Don't live a whole life now. Don't live a deferred life where you're waiting. Okay, once I get released and I'm free and I have all these other opportunities, then I will take the sort of steps I need. No, it starts right now. It started when I was in Pelican Bay State Prison with, I had 20-something years or whatever I had left. no early release. That's what it was going to be. What do I choose to do with my life, right? And so life started mattering. There's that religious awakening, right? And to now know they've seen hope, right? When I started out this journey, there was no hope, right? So you've seen hope. You've seen the people. So many people change their life. There's a lot of people coming out on parole that are making big splashes, big waves, right? So start on your life right now, right? Every single day, it's about building and programming. I remember I had a schedule. I had a schedule throughout every day, right? And at the end of the night, I wouldn't flip on my TV to kind of unwind late at night after they locked the bar for account. I wouldn't do it unless I had accomplished the things I wanted throughout the day, right? Whether it was reading the books, whether it was working out, whether it was studying, and I had to accomplish that. And then I felt accomplished by the end of the day, right? And so, but I had to make that commitment to life matters right now. And let me work on being the best possible version of myself and let the chips fall where they fall, right? Because you can't change things that are outside of your control, but you can change yourself if you try. And so that would be the gem, so to speak, that I drop.
And it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be afraid or have any trepidation about making commitments, because you decided to do what you did inside, and you could have had oppositions or haters, as we say, but making commitment is a form of respect also inside. Like if you really commit, you're respected.
Yeah, and I think people even doubt certain commitments. That's why when you'll hear people, when you get released from prison, you're gonna go back to your own ways, right? Because right. And I remember running into somebody and they said, "I gotta give it to you. You were talking all that stuff in prison,
and you did it,
Yeah. And so this was somebody that continued to be a gang member and hustler and all that, but told me like, I respect you for being committed.
There you go.
Nah, definitely. That's something that I definitely seen quite a bit when, people would make their commitment to their growth. You know what I mean? And now they taking different steps in their life. Now you see they hanging with a different crowd. Now you see they refraining from certain activities in certain areas and things like that where certain things go down, right? And I swear the things that used to just be whispered, amongst the compound kind of thing, it was like people was just waiting on somebody's downfall versus like really supporting that. You know what I mean? But I say that to say, like, to your point, I've definitely heard that said like quite a bit. Like, man, I got to give it to you, bro. You really stuck with it. Like, respect. You know what I mean? Because that commitment aspect, it really is commendable and it really is respectable. But ultimately, I think it's influential. I think it really influences others to see when, especially depending on how far down the rabbit hole you once were. Like when you see like a complete 180, like this person used to really be like heavily thugging or heavily on drugs or heavily on something different, and now they're in the complete opposite direction. I think ultimately some of the takeaways for like people on the outside looking in is like, damn, if he could transform in that type of way and he's really sticking to it, maybe I can too.
Exactly. I think more than anything that has been said, I think you touched on it. It was right. It's by leading by this example. When people can see it, right, this proximity to the change that's possible, then it becomes believable. Prior to that, it's abstract. Right. Oh, I could do this. I could do that. Yeah, whatever. Everything that I'm seeing that's supposed to represent justice is not justice, right? It's punitive. It's trying to punish me. And so I'm trying to get away, right? I'm trying to get away with it, right? But when I see people actually be able to commit to the sort of way of, being most likely to be successful in this world, right? And seeing that they're not, kept back by circumstances from their past or who they were because of this, this sort of criminal conviction. And they see the change that's possible, that's so much likely to inspire people. And I get that from the actual work that I've been doing. I see that being like so instrumental to the change.
Absolutely.
I saw that with you.
Definitely. I mean,
I met E when he was in San Quentin.
Oh,
and
okay.
just to see his transformation over time.
Absolutely.
Your commitment. He wrote over 500 songs inside.
This is true.
Okay.
And so seeing all those things evolve, and seeing all of that happen, that was my mic drop. But still, it was, so we've witnessed so much of that, but we're sitting here together because of his evolution, right? His transformation, his commitment to do what he's doing.
Definitely.
Exactly. So it takes that commitment, right? There's so many brothers though inside prison that have an ability, right? That have a talent or could do something, but you also need opportunities. So it takes that commitment and it takes opportunities, right? And so bringing that together. That's changing the narrative and really creating some real change to the systems going on around right now.
Well, that's interesting because, as you know, Pelican Bay was all level 4.
Yep.
We converted that to 1 yard to level 2, which is, for those who don't know, been in prison for a while, bring your points down to a level where you can have more of a community,
Yes.
to your point. And now we have a really successful program inside Pelican Bay that level 4 guys are looking at now. Right?
Mess his head up. Let him know what they're able to take back to the cells.
They also have laptops.
Bruh.
What's going on over there?
They can
literally.
take laptops back to their housing unit. So can you imagine when you were there, if you had a laptop?
Learning the code.
Yeah, that would have changed the game, right? Because we didn't have. It was learn how to work in the kitchen, right? It wasn't
Right.
like, wasn't it wasn't a lot of certain things we could do, and it was such a hard thing to get into as well, right? But learning code, right? Now I think like, no, this is not just like a prison job. This is not just right. This is the possibility, and there's nothing wrong with like certain prison jobs and anything like that. But it's the possibility that I could do this as well, right? That means that people believe in our capabilities as well, right?
Well, we changed the mindset from job to career.
That part.
And I think that's fundamental. So during some of my research, right, we talk about Dr. Pettis's well-being development model, and one of the sort of 5 key facilitators of well-being are meaningful work trajectories, right, as opposed to just having a job, right?
Yeah.
It's a meaningful work trajectory.
That's right. So with that in mind, we really appreciate you coming in and sharing with us. And one of the things we love to ask, and you've been in the system, now you're outside and you're a pillar of your community. If there was one thing in criminal justice reform or criminal justice in general that really sticks out to you that you would change, what would that be?
So there's so many things that I would change, and I don't think there's a one sort of, quick fix to it all. But
I'm not saying quick fix. I'm just saying one thing that maybe it was an obstacle that you faced that if we change that, we're talking about enhancements for one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm getting it. That was just like my little preamble that I always right? All right. So there's so much, right? Because I think it was kind of piecemealed together, the system, right?
Yeah.
Some people talk about intentionality, but I think I don't give people too much credit for thinking that deeply. I think everything was just like piecemeal and they just didn't care about us, so it didn't matter. We got lost in it. But so the one thing I would say is change the power of the district attorney. Right, the district attorney is the most powerful person inside the criminal legal system. If they don't charge certain things, then you don't have. Then that person's not facing all that time, right? And the judge usually goes along with it, and it kind of incentivizes police officers to charge particular crimes. And right now, I know for a lot of things, they kind of, they're able to charge felonies, knowing that if they go to prison, then that doesn't come from our money. But if they go to a county jail sentence, that comes from our money, right? So there's a sort of incentive to give these people give community members these charges, right? So for district attorneys to represent the people, which includes all community members, right? I would change that.
That's heavy. And I know it is certain modifications that they're doing as far as for the power structure of DAs, like 1170D, for instance. But that's not in the sense of reducing the power of like how they can sentence somebody in the sense of like the sentence they got. It's more so restructuring sentences.
Yeah.
So to your point, I do think that is something that definitely needs to get revisited and remodified for sure.
They have a lot of power. They get more money usually in the budget than the public defender's office does, right? And there's just so much wrong. And I'll just add this, right? In 2018, the district attorney's office went, they sent somebody to my parole hearing saying that I was a threat to public safety. Don't release me, right? And so, who was the district attorney concerned about? Was it me? For sure. Not. They didn't care about me, the community, how it could impact and what good it could do. Just be punitive and lock a person up as long as possible. How does that benefit the people? How does it benefit the community, right? And so there's a lot of need to be done with the district attorney and their power.
Absolutely. Well, more on that in the future for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what we can go on and on about right there, bro. For sure. We're going to have to holler. We're going to have to continue to holler for sure. But definitely, man, thank you so much, man. This has been an absolute pleasure. So serious, man. And again, got to give you your flowers for sure. Definitely, again, got to give you your flowers. But one thing I say all the time, and I really mean this, man, presence is priceless. So thank you so much for being present, man. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, for dropping them jewels on this whole lot of wisdom and a whole lot of inspiration. So thank you, man.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for breaking the mold yourself. Thank you for providing opportunities for people to break the mold.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you just heard this powerful conversation with me and my dog Chris and the one and only Dr. Yehudah Pryce right here on the Last Mile Radio on Sirius XM. It just went down. But stay tuned and we're going to be back shortly.